to Season 5 of the Hey Girl podcast with your host and my mom, Bethany Needham. This season, we get to hear from some incredible new guests, and we're bringing back some of our faves. Each guest will share their story of running their race in their place, and we hope they inspire you to do the same. If you want more information or to connect with my mom, go follow our new Instagram at HeyGirlGram, friend us on Facebook at HeyGirlPod, or even better, join our brand new Patreon to get bonus materials, hang with my mom, and you get to help Hey Girl continue to grow and reach more people. That's pretty cool. All right, time to grab that seltzer and maybe a tissue box just in case. Here's my mom.
Hey listeners, and welcome back to another week of the Hey Girl podcast. Now, this week, we get to sit down with Jennie Lusko. Guys, I enjoyed this conversation so much and just really appreciate Jennie setting aside the time to sit down and share her story with us. You may have heard of her or her husband, Levi. Maybe you've read her book or his books, but can I just say that I have such a great appreciation when I get to meet someone that maybe, like Jennie, I followed on social media, so excited for her book to release, was honored and flattered when she agreed to come on the podcast, and then to finally meet her face to face and her be so down to earth and easy to talk to. I can't wait for you to hear her story today. But before we get to it, maybe you've been tuning into Hey Girl for a while. Maybe this is the first episode you're ever hearing. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for setting aside the time to listen to this podcast. Guys, listening is, honestly, if you didn't listen, this would just be me by myself in a room and kind of be awkward. So first, thank you for listening. And can I just ask you a favor, friend to friend, sister to sister? If you want to help support what Hey Girl is doing, I've got 3 easy ways for you. First is to leave us a 5-star review and maybe some nice words about what you've really enjoyed about Hey Girl. Now, if you're just not enjoying it and you're like, these amazingly powerful stories that point me to Jesus are so annoying, then maybe just don't leave a review. Just keep on moving. But for those of you who are loving it, we appreciate those reviews and they help us and this podcast to reach more people. Second, share us with your people. Maybe even after today's episode, screenshot, put it on your Instagram, tag us at HeyGirlGram. And man, what an encouragement that is to us. We love to reshare those posts that you make, and we love that that helps other people get to hear these stories and be encouraged in their walks as well. Finally, guys, if you really love Hey Girl, we would love it if you could join our Patreon. You can go to my website, BethanyNeedham.com. You'll find the link for the Patreon. Guys, there's 2 tiers or 2 opportunities to be a part of this. The first is Hey Girl Nation. It's $5 a month. Guys, it's like a Starbucks drink, but that $5 a month helps us continue to do what we do here at Hey Girl, and we appreciate the support so much. And then Hey Girl Squad, y'all, we appreciate our Hey Girl Squad so much. At $20 a month, we know that they have sacrificed to invest in what Hey Girl is doing. And man, we could not say thanks enough. And we also love that not only do we get to give them the early release episodes that Hey Girl Nation gets, but we also get to plan events like the one we have on March 11th and other things like doing Bible studies together and just connecting just maybe a little deeper in community than we get to in other ways. So again, leave a 5-star review, share us with your people, join our Patreon. All of these things are such a huge help and support to the Hey Girl podcast, and myself and my team. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Y'all, you're going to want your favorite flavored seltzer or drink of choice, your favorite fuzzy blanket, because man, this is going to be just a lovely, lovely time because I get to introduce you to Miss Jennie Lusko. All right, listeners, I have a special treat for y'all today. I am here with Miss Jennie Lusko. I have to ask, in the last name, is it like an S sound or a Z sound?
Ooh, Lusko. It definitely more S. Lusko.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes me
I'm
feel
like,
better that I made
which
you
one
think
is
about
it?
it. I have a son, Josiah, and people frequently call him Josiah, like they make it a Z
Oh,
sound. I was like, oh, I guess it's funny. S's can go either way.
it's so
So,
true. It's very true.
well, I'm excited to have you. You came highly recommended. It's so funny. I have heard your husband speak before, and I've think read, he's written more than one book, correct? Or
Yeah,
just
four
okay,
books.
so
Yeah.
I've read a couple of his books, but so your name came recommended, and I was like, I know that last name, but
Let's go.
I was like, I know this. I don't know how to say it, but I know it.
Yeah.
And then I saw that you had written a book, which I got so excited.
Oh,
And so I just think it's neat. Our team was able to work this out. But Jennie, for those who maybe they don't know you, they don't know the last name, or maybe they're better at pronouncing it than I am. Whoever they are out there, why don't you take some time and introduce yourself?
amazing. Well, Bethany, thank you so much for having me. And it's really a joy to get to be here with you today and chat with you. My name is Jennie Lusko, and I was born and raised in Monterey, California, and met my husband in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we were serving in the church. I had moved from Monterey to Albuquerque to serve in a missions internship at this church. And lo and behold, God had my future husband there waiting for me in youth ministry. And so we were serving in youth ministry together. And that's the best place to meet someone, is at church. And when you're serving and just focusing on what God has for you, and then you look up and you're like, oh, hi. And then about a year later, we moved to Southern California. And from there, a couple of years later, moved to Montana, of all places, and that is Northwest United States. For those of you who don't know, I didn't know. Literally, we were like, wait, where's Montana? Is that like Midwest? Honestly, didn't really know. Like, we knew that God had put it in our hearts to start a church one day, but didn't know where that would be. In our minds, it was like maybe in New York or LA or some big city. And then somehow, literally it just kind of happened so organically. This guy was like, hey, you should move to Montana. Like, there's such a need for a Bible teaching, awesome church. You guys should move there. And Levi and I are like, I don't think so. Like, where is this? And so anyways, but it was that moment that we kind of God just kind of stuck that in our heart a little bit, and we couldn't shake it. And so that was summer 2006. And then we moved January 2007. So it was just kind of a whirlwind, and it just seemed like God was kind of just literally like paving the way for us to go. Didn't make sense. Even we had people in our lives who were like, what on earth are you doing? Like, are there even any people in Montana? Like, this doesn't make any sense. God's called you to reach so many people, and now you're moving to a place where there's just cows. It doesn't make sense. And so, but we just felt like God might be leading us in this way. And so anyways, we started January 14th. It was 14 degrees out. 14 people showed up. We literally just came in town. We didn't have any such, I don't know if you know what ARC is, but it's this amazing organization that helps church planners. So like they give you like, this is how you plan a church. And we didn't have such a thing. And so we just started. We moved and started the church right away, and 14 people showed up. And it's so beautiful because like now looking back, it's truly just the seed of what God had planned for us. And
Wow.
yes, we love our church. It's called Fresh Life, and we're in 4 different states, and also now we're all over on the internet like most churches these days. But looking back, we've just seen God's faithfulness. And I even said to my husband today, because we are celebrating 14 years of our church, and I said, man, look what happens when you just keep showing up. Because it's like, okay, wow, 14 years, but it was really like looking back, those moments of like when we felt like quitting, or we felt like, man, what are we even doing? And is this even making a difference? Or this is too hard, or whatever, like those moments in the sand when we were like, no, we're just going to show up again, and we're going to come to the office, and my husband's going to prep a message, and he's going to preach his heart out, and we're just going to keep going. And it's just so cool when you just decide to do that. You look back and you see God working in you and his faithfulness. And we've been married almost 17 years. Gosh, yes, marriage is amazing, growing all the time. We have 5 kids. Our oldest is 15, and we have 4 girls and a little guy. He's our youngest. He's our little caboose, and he is amazing. He's 3. His name's Lennox. Yeah, it's a joy. We love what we get to do. I homeschool. Our oldest is at a public high school. I homeschool the younger ones. Our second born daughter, Lenya, would be 13 this year, but she went to heaven suddenly 5 days before Christmas in 2012. And so we say we have 4 on earth and 1 in heaven waiting for us. Yeah. I mean, I kind of gave a 30,000-foot overview of my life. I told you earlier, I was like, I don't know how long this is going to go. I'm a very long talker.
No, that was perfect. And there are some things that stood out that I really appreciate that you shared. And one in particular is you just described it as, it's amazing what God will do when you just keep showing up, like day after day. And I just think that's a good word anytime, but especially in at least for me these days right now, where it's kind of hard to plan ahead or think that far ahead, because if last year taught us anything, it's like it could change. I don't like
Totally.
I mean,
Oh
it
my
always
gosh.
could, but we're just hyper aware of it right now. And so that beautiful picture of faith, we say at Hey Girl, we want to encourage people to run their race in their place.
I
And that
love
idea of like our place is just showing up day
Yeah.
after day. And you said it, that isn't always easy, or like I've seen little bits you mentioned of your church that will pop up online, and I obviously there'll be people that have heard your name before. And sometimes I think we get this idea that these people that we look at, and it's like, wow, this successful ministry and all these things. And yes, God's doing incredible things, but we forget that you guys also have to show up when it's not glamorous, and like
Right.
it's not going super smoothly or whatever it is. And
Totally. Well, and that's what's so beautiful about like what God calls you to. Because I mean, for us, we started Fresh Life, and we get to have the honor of leading this thing. And somehow, I mean, God uses, I love that verse that says that he uses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And that's how we feel. Like, we feel like, man, who are we that God would use us to lead people? Like, it's so crazy. We also have an amazing, beautiful opportunity to speak in so many different places. So like, my husband gets asked to speak at conferences or other churches or leadership retreats or meetings or whatever. And so we get to also travel the world and see what God's doing worldwide in Australia, Florida, and New York. And it's really so beautiful because we get to see that, and we get to be inspired by other pastors and churches and how they do things. But then we have to apply it to our church, and we have the reality of leading, actually doing it. So I mean, there are times literally where it's like, man, we should just do the traveling thing for a living. Like, that just sounds easier. But we also get to do the hard work of just the showing up day in, day out, leading people, hopefully just doing what God's called us to do, seeing people whose lives are changed and who are changed by the gospel and whose marriages are being restored, and just seeing truly God move and bring fresh life to people. And so that's actually it's a tension, but it's so powerful. And I think that's so beautiful about being a part of the local church is you get to put roots down and you get to practice that keep showing up kind of thing where you could be offended by something someone says or does or whatever, and that could be an opportunity to leave, or that could be an opportunity to grow and to ask God to help you not be so easily offended, and to keep loving and to keep serving and to keep honoring when it feels like all you should do is run away. And so I think it is that tension of continuing to show up, especially when you don't feel like it. And it's the same in family. Like I know for me, the season I'm in is my oldest is 15. I have a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So we don't have diapers in our house anymore, which seems like a miracle. Like I remember those days where it was like, I'm going to be changing diapers for the rest of my life.
Yes.
But now it's like, oh gosh, like I wish, as much as I in those days like knew like I want to savor these days. I know that they're not going to be in diapers forever. I know that they're not going to be breastfeeding forever or whatever. Like I want to savor these. As much as I remember saying that, like I wish now that I would have even more, And so it's like just the seasons and taking advantage of the time that you're in with your kids, that the age that they are, and just continuing to show up and just be faithful, and then the unsexy things and the just the unglamorous everyday. I'm gonna make my husband breakfast again. I'm gonna make my kids their lunches again, and it's like finding joy in those little things, And anyways, that's where I am.
I think that's incredible. I think there's also the side of it that showing up and you choosing to show up, any of us choosing to show up again and again. And I love that you talked about the local church, because I think it's a big deal, is that there's a gift in that with us showing up in our togetherness and our brokenness and all of it, because there's the theory of me saying like, oh, Jennie Lusko, like she's just a regular girl, like, and I can say that, but those people that get to walk day in and day out with you in that local church, in your community, they get to experience all of that, and not in a way, even, I know sometimes we think, well, it takes us off the pedestal, but in a way where there's one thing to experience God's grace, but I think there's that other beauty of it ministers to me to watch God's grace lived out in someone else's life, that they show up in their mess and God moves, and he continues to be faithful, and that these people are real, and that they hurt for things that are hard, and they struggle, and they have terrible days, and sometimes they say ridiculous things.
Yes.
But God.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and I think like my husband and I have joked about that, the traveling, because we do like minimal, just kind of around our region, we'll travel and visit to serve at different churches. And I joke all the time, like, this would be the life to not have to just like show up and you're the guest and everyone's just like so great. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for
Totally. For being here today.
Yes, thank
on
you.
this one day. I know.
And there's always that, like, all your marriage and your family is so beautiful. And I always fight that there's a part of me that literally wants to get up to the microphone and be like, let me just lay out. I just feel like I need to put the ugly just so we can somehow meet in the middle in this very short period of time. Like it's not, God's grace is sufficient for you and for me. And we all need it. So
yeah, it's so true.
And you have to be, so you have a 15-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. I have a 15-year-old daughter.
Oh my gosh.
She's my baby. She's my youngest.
Oh.
But I'm thinking that you're also in a very similar place. I just talked to another mom about this, where I'm realizing that when my kids were little, their needs were like, it's obvious that they needed me, diaper changes, late night feedings, whatever.
Right.
And I had this very wise mentor give me a heads up on this, which I'm grateful for, that said, just know that as they get older, you're going to think that they're going to need you less. It just seems like, they'll get older, and because it feels that way. It feels like the trajectory is going that way as they leave diapers and they buckle. I still remember when they buckled themselves in the car. And I was like,
Such a big deal.
we're getting places so much faster right
Right.
now.
Oh.
And it just kind of goes. And then something shifts when around middle school, that, like, I swear it enters when hormones enter, and it's a different kind of need, but I feel like it should be its own season. Like, we've missed this somewhere in the mommy books of
Seriously.
your kids are actually going to need you more, and it's not going to be as tangible. Like, it's not going to be the same thing every day, but just the emotional need and weight that you carry
Wow.
on your heart for these. I call them middles because they're not grown-ups, they're not littles, so they're my mediums. That's
Middles. I
right.
love that.
These are my
That's so
mediums.
cool. How many
But
kids do you have?
I have two. So I have my son in, I believe, 2 weeks turns 17.
Wow.
So I have one next year, senior year in high school. Like, we're talking college. It just
Wow.
crazy,
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
So, and we married. So I was 18 when we married, 19 with my son. So it's also this strange, like, I don't feel like I should be where
Well, I was going to say, I'm like, girl, you look good to have a 15 and 17-year-old.
well, I do feel like they have aged me more than I actually am, but I'm with you. It's that one, I joke all the time. I would go back to, potty training being the biggest stressor in my
Wow.
day.
Wow,
But
that's such a good point you bring up, because it's like it does change, and what they need is changing all the time too. So like, I mean, my 15-year-old is very like personal touch. She loves personal touch, but sometimes like I'll initiate, like I'll put my arm around her or whatever, and she won't want it. But then she'll just at random times just come around me and like give me a huge hug and want to hold my hand, and so it's weird because it's like I'm not the one in control, like before when they were babies, and where it's like, oh, I'm the one that's going to hold you, and I'm the one that's going to feed you, and I'm the one that's going to play with you. It's more like, okay, it's give and take, and it's me kind of putting down like, oh, I don't have time for this. No, it's like putting down what I'm doing and engaging and talking and listening, and it's just it's so different. And having a 15-year-old and a 3-year-old where I'm like trying to go in
yes,
between all the worlds, it is definitely so different, but it's also so fun because it's like the other day I was hanging out with my daughter, and it was just me and her, and we were like we were walking around and shopping, and we grabbed a coffee, and she looked at me and she's like, Mom, I just love hanging out with you. And I honestly like fought everything in me to not cry, because I was like, that's what I pray for. Like, I pray that our kids would want to hang out with us and want to talk to us and share with us. And so I think even that, like, I think when I remember when Olivia, our oldest, was even younger, and I was always overwhelmed because I always thought, like, what's going to happen when she's older? And what if she's like wayward teenager? And I think it started younger, where it was like when she would tell me stuff, like, and that was a choice right then, like when she was 6, where I had to put my whatever down and just focus on her and listen and just kind of be in the moment. And I remember thinking in those days, like, Lord, help me to really engage now so that I can really engage then, and she'll be willing to like let down her hair, so to speak, and really kind of tell me what's going on then. But it's hard though, because like, I don't know what even I'm saying, except that like, I think we can always kind of be in a place where we're just kind of rushing. And I know for me, like, I'm leading the staff meeting here, and I'm also homeschooling the little ones here, and like kind of going back and forth. And sometimes I feel like I'm not anywhere because I'm everywhere. And so I have to like force myself, like when I'm with the kids, like, okay, I'm in kid mode right now, but I feel like I have to force myself to do that every day. And I think that there were moments when Olivia was younger where I did not do that right. And I was like, oh no, now she's not gonna like talk to me about her struggles or whatever. But I think it's like just giving that to God, because I think we can so stress about like, are they gonna like rebel when they're older? Are they gonna want to be a part of the church when they're older? Like, I think I just recently read, Pam Tebow said, fearful moms make fearful kids. And that really like struck me, because I think so often I'll operate out of fear and I'll do something because, man, I'm afraid that my kid's gonna get hurt, or I'm afraid my kid's gonna choose the wrong thing. But it's like, Lord, help me to be a mom of faith and to lead my kids in that, and to lead my kids in learning the Bible and loving people and making wise choices. And I think that that's just the daily, like, walking hand in hand with the Lord and trusting him. And I think that there is nothing quite like being a mom, learning how to trust God being a mom, because it's like there's just so many things and you just feel like a failure most of the time. At least I do. But it's like, okay, God, I just give you this moment, and I don't know how this is going to turn out in the end, but help me right now. Help me right now to love my kids and to love my husband and to lead well and to do the very best that I can, because I'm not going to be perfect, but help me just to do what you've called me to do right now. And leading out of faith and not fear, I think, has been a huge thing I've been learning. Relearning.
I guess I wonder too. My own story is different. I've not walked through losing a child, which is, it's something that's part of your story. I've walked through facing it in the ICU and coming to terms with this could be it, and which is still not the same as, but I do think there's something about walking to that place where you realize I've never been in control to begin with. Like that you know, my showing up in faithfulness every single day for my kids and being present, like you said, it could be so easy. And I've wrestled with that. And losing one of your children is in heaven, but how that has influenced you as a mom, and also kind of walking that journey of, God, I need to lead, to mother in faith and not in fear.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm so sorry for what you went through. That's so scary too. That's a really good question. I know that right after Lenny went to heaven, so Olivia was 7, Daisy was 2.5, and then Clover wasn't even 1 yet. So we had the 3 girls left. And there was definitely a season when I was afraid. Like it was hard. Like because one of the things that was hard about it all was, so she went to heaven on a Thursday night, and it was the week before Christmas. So that whole week leading up to it, I mean, leading a church, leading a staff, we had like a staff Christmas party one night. We had a student thing we were leading one night. It was just, just a full schedule that week, but we were looking forward to Friday Family Day, which was in those days our rhythm. Like we would work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, actually, and Saturday, Thursday, and then Friday was our family day, our day off. We would put our phones away, just have fun with the kids. And so the whole week we were like, okay, you guys, this is so crazy, but we have family day coming up, and we're going to have our family special dinner, and we're going to go ice skating. It was like, there was a lot of anticipation because it was a crazy week. And so that night, Levi and I were actually on a date, because Thursdays were our date nights. Lenny went to heaven at my mom's house, and we were just pulling up to the house, and my mom was trying to give her asthma treatment because she had asthma, but she wasn't taking it. And when I walked in, Lenya looked at me, and I tried to give her treatment, but then she just passed out on the counter, and then she never came back. And so Levi came in and started doing CPR, and later we found out that was when she went to heaven, was at that moment. but it was hard going forward in so many ways. But even just with the date night, like Thursday night date night, we just couldn't we couldn't do that. It was so like that was a hard thing to face. And so then we kind of transferred to Thursday mornings where it was still light out and we would like go on a bike ride or go to coffee or something. But we kind of had to pivot. But then even like before that, we were so used to going on trips. Like my husband and I would go away sometimes, or we'd go all together as a family. But that was a hard thing. I remember the first time that Levi and I left, which wasn't for like another couple months after that. But still, it was like leaving my kids. Like, what if something happens and we're not there? And I think that that's natural. I think that that's a natural, like, just way of thinking. But it really was something that I had to constantly give to the Lord. And I had to constantly come to a point where it's like, I ultimately, like you said, I ultimately do not have control. And God is the one, first of all, who knows the length of our days and who knows how long we have. And he's the one ultimately who's taking care of my kids. Honestly, like, yes, I am feeding them and loving them and teaching them and caring for them, but God is the one who has control over that. So it's like I had to fight to remember to have that kind of mentality of like, I can't live in fear, and I can't not go on a trip. I can't not go on a date. I can't not leave my kids. Like I have to. I have to lead my life in faith and believe that God is going to take care of me and he's going to take care of my husband. And I went through even a season of fear that my husband was going to die before me, and maybe that will happen. But I also had to come to that place of like, okay, why am I even worrying about this? Like I would literally wake up in the middle of the night and be afraid that God was going to take Levi and then I would be left. And what does that look like? And blah, 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 in my head. And it's like, oh my gosh, in these moments, I have to stop and I have to breathe and I have to replace that way of thinking with something else of like, God, help me to live every day the way you called me to live like it's the last day, to live like it's the first day, like, you know, like there's just that anticipation and that excitement of just living for God in the moment and not worrying what I don't even have control over. And so I feel like I've had to definitely like just give that to God every time those kind of fears come in of just like, God, I give this to you.
As you're saying that, the scripture from, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I have a necklace that says, even if, and that really just powerful statement of our God is able to save us, but even if he doesn't, like we will. And
Love that.
it's one of the most powerful, but as you were talking, I just, this prayer of this exchange from the what if to the even if,
Beautiful.
because I'm like sitting here half getting emotional, just thinking like I resonate so much with what you're saying of it's getting to that place with our kids and our spouses where the reality is it has to be an even if, because for you've walked through an even if kind of like, okay, God, you've taken my daughter, and still in this testimony of not that it was easy, not that you're just like, well, but just that you've walked through the suffering and continued to look to Jesus and point other people to him in the midst of that. And I think of that with my own kids, that Lord, I can't sit in the what ifs, like, what if the next time, it doesn't have the same outcome.
Yeah.
And even what you were saying, the first time Andy and I went away after, I really wrestled with that. In fact, I wrestled with people, like I wrestle with like other people's perception of it too. And people being like, wait a second, you're just gonna go away. Like, aren't you scared? Like, it's like feeding that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh
And
my gosh.
having to come to that place of, I can't live my life and parent my children and be the wife and mom that God's called me to be, just out of fear, like every day living in this what if. But I can continue to show both of my children that even in the midst of all of this that is scary, like we can trust God. I can continue to invest in my marriage and continue to be present for you, but also like to step away and to trust that my husband likes to say all the time, he's like, babe, the world already has a savior and it's not you. He's like, so his line is always
so
fold your
good.
cape, fold your cape.
That is great. That is so great. But it's true. It's like, I mean, the Bible says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I think that when we can when we can give God our fears, because I think those fears are natural. Those fears are, I mean, normal. So to really, but like to be able to give God our fear. And I love that even throughout all the whole Bible, like you see, like when Jesus shows up or when an angel shows up, like there's obvious fear because whoever it is says, fear not, or don't be afraid. And it's like, there's fear everywhere. Like we're going to feel fear.
Right.
And I think that's not the thing of like, don't feel afraid, but it's just when you do feel fear, give it to God and allow God to turn it into faith, and to remember that as we do, like God wants to replace that with love and power and a sound mind. And I just think of that sound mind just being like a strength in our mind, a grit in our mind, where we're not just letting any thoughts come in but we're actually like, oh, wait, hold on. I don't have to think that thought. I'm going to let that thought go, or like Corinthians says, keeping those thoughts captive. But like, I think I love the way my husband says it. He says like, put in a TSA in your mind. Like you're not just going to let any thought in. Like, yeah, thoughts are going to come in, but you don't have to let them stay. And so I think that is a huge thing, because as parents, as moms, as wives, as friends, as daughters, as sisters, like fear can plague us. But if we can just say, okay, I don't need to worry about that one. Like that thought just came in, but I will reject that. God, you take that one. I'm gonna think about the fact that I want to love my spouse today, and I want to work hard today, and I want to be a light in my work today, and I want to honor my professor today, or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
I think, but it is a fight. It is a fight to keep going forward, and it's a fight to live this life that God's called us to live. It's not going to just happen. It's kind of like my husband always says, like when you go in cruise control, like, or like when you kind of just let the wheel go, like you're not gonna veer it to where you're gonna go. You're gonna veer off the road. You know, it's like we have to fight to keep our hands on the wheel and keep going forward, and to keep focusing, and to keep going in the direction that God's called us to.
And as I like to say frequently to myself when I'm preaching to myself, and when all's said and done, do it scared. Like,
Yes.
the fear is still there, just do it scared.
Yep, exactly.
And
Totally.
more times than not, I feel like I used to describe it. It's that kind of white knuckle grip that sometimes I'm just gripping faith that there is even hope. Like I'm just, God, I'm trusting that you're in it. Like I'm not feeling it at all, but here we are.
Totally.
Like,
Totally. Well, I love that, because like even when God was telling Joshua, like be strong and courageous, like he didn't say feel strong and courageous. He said be strong and courageous. And I think that is so interesting, because I think so often we want to feel it first. We want to feel like we're going to take this mountain, we're going to take this arm, you know, like we want to feel ready. But so many times we don't. But if we just start taking those steps of faith, usually those feelings start coming alongside. But it's like, all right, we're going to do this regardless of how I feel.
no, is it Jeremiah? I think it's the Jeremiah passage that talks about the blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. And it talks about there'll be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots. And it goes through like, it doesn't fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. But the next verse is one we often like, it gets kind of cherry picked out of there, that the heart is deceitful above all things. And I always think about that, how when you tie it into all those, you realize like this is describing these like heat and like all of these things that feel terrible, like
Totally.
it feels wrong. And then it goes to say, like, listen, if you are like your roots are in and you are, regardless of what you feel, like just know that your leaves are going to remain green, that you don't
Yeah.
need to worry in drought. And your heart may say something very, your feelings, everything may feel different. But this is those who trust in the Lord. Like, blessed are the ones that just trust God,
Yes.
regardless of feeling in this. It's like one of my favorite passages for that.
It's
I love
so
it.
good. Yes, me too. I love that so much because you can actually be thriving and flourishing and cultivating the life you were born to live in the midst of the heat and the
Mm,
water and the pain and the heartache. Like there is that hope in the midst of the darkness that you're in, or the darkest place that you have been, or the pain that you're feeling. Like that just shows that no matter what you go through, like there can be a freshness and a flourishing and a beauty and a strength
mm,
in the very midst of it. And you don't have to necessarily already be through it in order to experience that, because even you passing through, going to the life that you're called to live, like that's all part of the growing, that's all part of the process, that's all the messy, the the soil, the
mm,
all the stuff, all the crud, like that's all part of the nourishment that you need to live this life that God's called
mm.
us to live and to shine bright and to. So I think that there is that also that tension of like, you're going to, when you go through the hard stuff and you trust God, it's going to bring a beauty, it's going to bring a strength.
Amen. And honestly, as part of having you on here and sharing your stories, is I feel like your life and your family, and not in perfection, but just in the beauty that God is created, that I just appreciate so much how you live that every day. Like, even when you may feel like, I don't know. I don't know if I showed up the right way,
I
that there
know.
are people that, even people that you don't know. I think that's the cool thing about, like, even podcasts. There'll be whoever that will listen that you may never meet face to face, and God gets to
Yeah,
use your story to encourage their own journey. It's such a humbling, but, like, I don't know, powerful thing. I
absolutely. Gosh.
I'm looking at the time and thinking, I don't want to run out of time before asking you about your book, because I do want to hear more about this. So why don't we
Oh,
take a few minutes and tell me about this book? And then also our listeners, like, I'm assuming they can get it from wherever wherever you can buy books, I guess.
yeah, I think
Amazon, where
so.
do people buy books?
Yeah. I know. Like, I don't even know if there's bookstores open anymore, but yeah, anywhere. It's called The Fight to Flourish. And it came out in May 2020. And it was like the best time, honestly, as much as people have been asking, what was it like to release a book in 2020? And it was actually God's perfect timing. Cause like, it's so funny. My husband says that like writing a book is like a message in the bottle. Like you do all this work in the front end, and then you kind of send it out, and then you just have no idea. And some people will write in or send you a message on Instagram or whatever and kind of tell you, but it's like you really don't have any idea. It's like, well, let's off that and see what happens. But it really was so beautiful because I would never have thought that my book would have come out in a time where people were forced to stay home and where we were experiencing a worldwide pandemic. And I'm so grateful. Like, I'm just grateful because the things that I've learned through the darkest days that I've been through, and the things that I've learned just the day to day is in this book. And I really do talk a lot about, I would say the foundation of it is our story with Lenya going to heaven and what that looked like, but then also just the daily struggle and the daily fight and the daily feeling like, oh my gosh, how can I be flourishing when I feel like I'm failing most of the time? But I think that that's the point. I think the point is that as we're seeking God and as we're trusting Him and as we're just in the journey that He's called us to, it's going to be messy and it's not going to be perfect and it's going to be hard and it's going to hurt and there's going to be heartache and there's going to be pain and grief of many kinds. I mean, grief of losing a loved one, grief of losing a job, of of the marriage that you thought it was going to be this way, but then it ended or it didn't look the way you thought. I think we all experience grief in so many different ways. But as we trust God, I love so much that in the Bible, God says that my ways are not your ways and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And I think we always have to remember that under the soil of our lives, like God is doing such a deep work that most of us won't even get to see until we're in heaven one day. And I think just us remembering that no matter what, like God loves us, God is good, and he has a plan. And actually, like the things that we go through, God can use us to bring comfort to others and to bring strength to others, and to he can actually use our pain for a purpose if we let him. And so I think that there's such a beauty in that. And so anyways, I'm so grateful that my book came out in a time where people just needed to be reminded that God loves them and he's for them, and that he shines in the dark, and he can cause us to shine bright in the midst of our heartache. So I love it. It's awesome. I'm so grateful.
I'm excited to read it. So I look forward to it, and I'll have to like send a message so that it's not just the complete, like you throw it out in the ocean. You're like,
Oh, that's
crickets.
awesome. Yeah.
Nobody's
Thank
ready.
you. Oh, that's amazing.
So before I let you go, I'd love to ask this question at the end a lot, especially when guests have gone through a really specific, whether experience, circumstances, whatnot, just knowing that we have a lot of listeners that probably relate at some level to that. And you have obviously walked through, and we've had guests previously that have walked through this, the loss of a child, some of them the loss of a spouse. But my question, and again, I know I'm just throwing you on the spot, but if you were sitting down with another young woman, like one of our listeners today, drinking coffee, tea, whatever it is, and this was somebody who they're in it, like they've just kind of experienced this. Do you have any, maybe just a word of encouragement or something that either maybe somebody said to you that meant a lot, or since as far as you walked in this journey, you're like, that would have been good to hear. Like this was the thing that I needed to be reminded of.
Wow. Well, I am not the queen of one-liners. That's my husband's the king of that. But I guess I would just honestly say, first of all, that your pain is real, and what you're walking through is real, and what you're going through matters, and matters to God, and it's not like hoping in the Lord and trusting the Lord makes everything like happy, because it doesn't, because it's still horrible that you're going through this loss, and that you lost a child or a spouse or a job or a marriage or a relationship or whatever it is. Like that's hard and it's horrible, and the hurt is real, and the hurt is yours. And I think that with that, God also hates that you're struggling, and that hates that you're hurting, and he's there with you. And I just think the biggest thing is like just hold on, like just wait, because there's more to your story. This isn't the final chapter. Like there's more. So if you just hold on, if you just wait, God has more for you. God has more he wants to do through you. God has more for the people in your life, in your sphere of influence, in your family, in your friendships. And he's not done. So even though maybe your situation feels done, or feels like there's no hope, like God's not done, and he's working so much deeper in the soil of your life than you can see or feel. And I just, one of my favorite passages in the Bible is John 15, where Jesus is saying, he says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me, and I in you, and you will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And so I think in this moment right now, in the pain that you're in now, in the season that you're in now. Hold tight to Jesus, like be in his word, surround yourself with people who love him, the church, just listen to worship music, just abide in Jesus, because the only way that you're going to be able to move forward and grow forward, and you're not going to get past this and you're not going to get over this, but you're going to get through it because Jesus is with you every step of the way. And apart from him, you can do nothing. So just stick with Jesus. And something that's helpful for me is being in the Gospels. So being in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John in the Bible is always helpful for me, because I get to get a front row seat to Jesus and seeing how he loved people and how he interacted with people and who he is. And so stick close to Jesus and just wait, because there's more. Don't give up.
Amen. That is a good word. Well, Jennie, this has been lovely. And
Thank you, Bethany. Such a joy.
yeah, such a great time to chat. Thank you for sharing, for giving us your time. It's been so great having you.
Thank you for having me.